that love always wins, no matter what. Even when they're gone, there's still that love there to be grateful for. I wish he hadn't died after that. It would have been nice to spend some more time with him. But yeah, I was grateful that we had that.
I love you. Those were the last words Eddie Van Halen whispered before closing his eyes, not to his current wife, but to Valerie Bertinelli, the woman who had once left him after a marriage scarred by tragedy. Valerie Bertinelli was once the golden girl of one day at a time, a star adored across America. Yet behind the dazzling lights lay years of a marriage shattered by addiction and distance. Why then, in his final moments, did that love return? And how did Valerie Bertinelli, after all the loss, rise to become an icon of inspiration for millions? Behind that story lies a truth Valerie Bertinelli has never fully revealed, a secret powerful enough to change the way the world sees a marriage thought long closed. Join Celebs, Discovery as we unravel a journey that no heart can remain indifferent to. Valerie Ann Bertinelli was born on April 23, 1960, in Wilmington, Delaware, into a Catholic family of Italian and English descent. Her father, Andrew Bertinelli, was an executive at General Motors, while her mother, Nancy Carvin, carried with her the traditional values of her English roots. Before Valerie's birth, the family had endured a loss that never healed. Her older brother, Mark, died of poisoning at just 17 months old. That tragedy left a silent wound on the entire household and shaped the way Valerie grew up, surrounded by love, yet always aware of how fragile happiness could be. The youngest of three brothers, Valerie spent her childhood in Claymont, Delaware, and later Clarkston, Michigan. There, the tight-knit sense of community and family gatherings planted in her the seeds of humility and compassion. In later years, Valerie often looked back at the little town of Claymont with deep affection, peaceful houses, kind neighbors, and the feeling of belonging that Hollywood could never quite replace. Her father's job with General Motors meant the family was constantly on the move, from Delaware to Shreveport, Louisiana, then Oklahoma City, and finally Los Feliz in Los Angeles, California. Each relocation forced young Valerie to start over with new schools and friends. That instability made her sensitive and easily hurt, yet it also sharpened her adaptability and her longing to find a stage where she could truly be herself. In Los Angeles, Valerie studied at the Tammy Lynn School of Artists before attending Granada Hills High School. Though she did not graduate in 1978, decades later she returned to complete her credits and earn her diploma, as if to affirm that the unfinished dreams of youth deserve to be fulfilled. Raised in the Catholic faith, Valerie found comfort in both family and church. That faith, along with her childhood memories of Delaware, became her spiritual foundation for weathering the storms of her later life. In 2017, on her Food Network show Valerie's Home Cooking, she and her cousin revisited their childhood in Delaware, recalling simple family meals, laughter, and togetherness, small moments that proved to be her greatest source of strength. Valerie's childhood was a blend of grief and community warmth. Those experiences shaped her empathy, sincerity, and simplicity, qualities that would mark every role she played, making her not just a television star, but someone audiences embraced as if she were family. Valerie entered her teenage years with a heart full of uncertainty, but also a burning desire to prove herself. When her family finally settled in Los Angeles, an unexpected opportunity appeared. While many children struggled to adapt, Valerie discovered her escape: acting. She trained at the Tammy Lynn School of Artists, a place that not only sharpened her craft, but also taught her how to turn pain into strength. Her big break came sooner than she could have imagined. At just 15, she was cast in an episode of Apple's Way, 1974. That small role turned out to be a golden ticket when producers took notice of her luminous presence and the mix of fragility and authenticity that radiated from the young girl. A year later, Valerie was chosen to play Barbara Cooper in the CBS sitcom One Day at a Time, 1975. She was only 15. No one expected a teenager with no professional background to step straight into one of CBS's biggest sitcoms. But Valerie had a rare weapon: sincerity. On screen, Barbara Cooper was both innocent and strong, a reflection of Valerie herself, a girl learning to grow up amid loss and change. Within just a few episodes, audiences across America were captivated by the girl with the radiant smile and quietly sorrowful eyes. Valerie quickly became a symbol of youth in the 1970s. She didn't just win the hearts of viewers, critics also took notice. By her early 20s, she had won 2 consecutive Golden Globes for Best Supporting Actress in 1981 and 1982. An achievement few young actors could claim, cementing her as one of television's rare teen prodigies. Behind the scenes, Valerie still had to complete high school and struggle with a youth consumed by stage lights. At the 50th anniversary of One Day at a Time, she recalled, "I still remember the smell. I can still see the audience sitting there. I knew that moment would change my life." That simple recollection revealed the rare sensitivity of a teenage girl forced to grow up too soon, yet wise enough to seize a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Her early career wasn't just a springboard into stardom. It left audiences with a strange, lasting impression. They felt they weren't just watching a fictional character, but following the real life of a girl growing before their eyes. From that moment on, Valerie was no longer just an actress. She became a familiar face in every American household. If age 15 was the doorway to a miracle, the following years were the journey that carried Valerie Bertinelli straight into the ranks of America's biggest television stars. One Day at a Time was not just a sitcom. It was a cultural phenomenon that lasted nearly a decade. From 1975 to 1984, Valerie appeared in 209 episodes, becoming a familiar face in millions of living rooms across the country. Her role as Barbara Cooper earned her 2 consecutive Golden Globes for Best Supporting Actress in 1981 and 1982. An achievement few in their early 20s could claim. By the age of 22, Valerie held in her hands the kind of glory most people only ever dream of. But behind that spotlight were stories only Valerie herself truly understood. She recalled that during the very first taping of One Day at a Time, she was so nervous that she secretly ran to the bathroom to cry before stepping in front of the cameras. That trembling vulnerability, however, made Barbara Cooper so real that audiences instantly connected. Years later, Valerie admitted with emotion, "I can still remember the smell of the wood on the set and the laughter of the live audience. To me, it wasn't just acting. It was a second family." Throughout the show's run, Valerie was still a high school student. Some days she wore her uniform, finished a math test, then rushed to the studio to smile brightly before millions of TV viewers. "It felt like I was living 2 different lives," she recalled. Early fame also brought harsh pressures. Producers often demanded she keep her figure at all costs. Valerie felt her body no longer belonged to her. It was merely an image for the public. These experiences planted the seeds of her long battle with weight and self-esteem, later chronicled in her memoir, Losing It. That success kept her from being boxed in as just a teen star. After One Day at a Time ended, she continued to appear in hit television series. From Touched by an Angel, 1993 to 2001, where she starred for 2 seasons with an average of more than 12 million viewers per episode, to the sitcom Hot in Cleveland, 2010 to 2015, a 128-episode series that earned multiple Emmy nominations and reaffirmed Valerie's enduring appeal in her 50s. But Valerie's career didn't stop at acting. She expanded into an unexpected field: food. When Valerie's home cooking premiered, many colleagues assumed she was just dabbling for fun. Yet the show quickly became a phenomenon. Valerie revealed that the recipes featured were not created by a production team, but were dishes tied to her Italian-American childhood. Each episode carried a memory: pasta her mother made on moving days, or the cookies her grandmother baked every Christmas. For viewers, it was no longer just a cooking show, but a family diary told through food. The success of the show was measured not only in sentiment, but also in numbers. Over 14 seasons, 2015 to 2023, and nearly 172 episodes, Valerie's home cooking generated steady revenue from broadcasting and advertising, while etching Valerie's image in the hearts of multiple generations. A reliable source estimated her income from Food Network programs, including Valerie's Home Cooking and Kids Baking Championship, at around $10 million, a clear testament to the financial weight of this branch of her career. In terms of reputation, the show brought Valerie 2 Daytime Emmy Awards in 2019 for Outstanding Culinary Program and Outstanding Culinary Host. These awards elevated not just her artistic credibility, but also her commercial value, attracting sponsors and brand partnerships. Even after the show ended in 2023, it was still nominated for Culinary Series, and Valerie herself continued to receive nominations for Outstanding Culinary Host, proof that even in conclusion, Valerie's home cooking retained its appeal and quality. The success of the show can be explained by many factors. Its long run built a loyal audience network. Prestigious awards solidified its brand standing. Valerie's warm, approachable cooking style made viewers feel as if they were sitting right in a family kitchen, and her ability to host multiple shows at once diversified her income streams and broadened her audience from middle-aged viewers to younger generations. Through this, she proved that her success was not confined to the screen. She could also win hearts with the warmth of a home kitchen. Success also came to Valerie as an author. In 2008, she released her memoir, Losing It and Gaining My Life, Back 1 Pound at a Time. The book quickly became a New York Times bestseller, selling hundreds of thousands of copies in a short time. Its power did not come from glamour, but from a rare honesty. Valerie recounted her long battle with weight, self-esteem, and the image pressures Hollywood placed on a television star. That candor made readers feel as though they were confiding in a close friend, not just flipping through the pages of a celebrity's story. Nearly 15 years later, Valerie once again proved her enduring appeal with Enough Already, Learning to Love the Way I Am Today. 2022. Once again, the book landed at the top of the New York Times list, showing that the public wanted more than just to see Valerie on screen or in the kitchen. They wanted to hear her inner voice. If Losing It told the story of a woman fighting to reclaim herself. Enough already was the declaration of a seasoned soul, learning to love oneself, scars and all. The lasting vitality of these two memoirs lies not only in their sales figures, but in the empathy they generated. Millions of readers, especially middle-aged women, saw themselves in Valerie. Those who had doubted their worth, felt insecure before the mirror, yet still longed to reclaim peace within. Through her writing, Valerie became more than an actress or television host. She became a voice of healing for an entire generation. The numbers: 209 sitcom episodes, tens of millions of TV viewers, 2 Golden Globes, 2 Daytime Emmys, and best-selling books, stand as proof that Valerie Bertinelli was not just a child star who made it early, but a career that endured, constantly reinventing itself across generations. She showed that a teenage actress could grow, stand strong, and last in the unforgiving world of Hollywood, a feat few have achieved. If Valerie Bertinelli's career had given her dazzling fame at an early age, her marriage to Eddie Van Halen led her down a very different path, one of passion, but also of tragedies that would never fully heal. By the late 1970s, Valerie was already a familiar face in American households, with her role as Barbara Cooper in the sitcom One Day at a Time. The image of the friendly, wholesome girl next door, paired with 2 Golden Globes before she even turned 21, made her a symbol of youth for an entire generation. Eddie Van Halen, on the other hand, walked a completely different road. He was a free-spirited rock star, a musical icon whose unique guitar style set stages ablaze with wild, unrestrained energy. It was August 29th, 1980, during Van Halen's Invasion tour at the Hirsch Memorial Coliseum in Shreveport, Louisiana. Valerie, already a television star, entered the backstage area with her rock fan brothers, hoping for a chance to meet the band. She carried bags of M&Ms for everyone, and before long she found herself in the quiet world behind the lights, where musical prodigy Edward Van Halen was resting. Van Halen's manager, Noel Monk, later recalled, "After Edward dried off and changed clothes, I introduced him to Valerie. It was so sweet to see them together. Both of them were clearly nervous and a bit reserved. That told me this was something real." Valerie, who was so used to being in front of cameras, suddenly stammered and blushed like a schoolgirl. And Edward, who commanded thousands of fans every night, lost all his rock star bravado in front of that young woman. Just 4 months later, Eddie proposed to Valerie on New Year's Eve, 1980. On April 11, 1981, Valerie Bertinelli, then only 21, walked down the aisle in a pristine white gown beside her groom, 25-year-old Eddie Van Halen, at St. Paul's Catholic Church in Westwood, California. To the cameras, they were the golden couple, America's TV sweetheart and the legendary rock star. Yet few realized that on that very day, the first cracks in their marriage were already showing. According to Runnin' with the Devil, the memoir by Van Halen's manager Noel Monk, the wedding resembled another public performance by the band. The atmosphere was thick with alcohol, loud jokes, and suspicious glances toward David Lee Roth, the notoriously wild frontman, always in competition with Eddie. More troubling, Eddie was already mired in alcohol and drugs. Monk pleaded with him to stay as clean as possible for the wedding, and Eddie nodded in agreement. The ceremony itself went smoothly, and the couple left the church amid cheers and flashing cameras. Everyone expected a night of lavish celebration at the historic Gray Hall mansion in Beverly Hills. But only minutes later, Eddie and Valerie disappeared. Monk eventually found them upstairs in the bathroom, and the scene was enough to break anyone's heart. Eddie Van Halen, still in his tuxedo, was curled over the toilet, drunk and vomiting. Valerie, in her spotless wedding dress, knelt beside him, holding back his hair. Tears streamed down the young bride's face. The wedding the whole nation watched had, behind closed doors, turned into a moment of raw pain and humiliation. Monk wrote that he stood frozen for several minutes, dreading the possibility of having to go downstairs and tell hundreds of guests, friends, family, Hollywood stars, that the reception might be over before it had even begun. But Valerie surprised everyone. In that chaos, she did not scold, did not complain. Instead, she gently comforted Eddie, helped him up, cleaned him, straightened his tie, and brushed his disheveled hair. In her eyes at that moment, Monk recalled, I saw no disappointment, only compassion and love. Moments later, Valerie and Eddie walked out of the bathroom hand in hand, as if nothing had happened. They reappeared in the glittering ballroom, where the crowd was waiting. Applause erupted. Almost no one, apart from a select few, knew that just minutes earlier the bride had cried in anguish on what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. After their glamorous wedding, the world believed Valerie Bertinelli and Eddie Van Halen would live a fairy tale life. The reality, however, was far more complicated. Tension set in almost immediately during the early years of their marriage. Their schedules were suffocating. Valerie was constantly tied to the set of One Day at a Time, while Eddie was on the road for endless tours and long nights in recording studios. They rarely had time together, and when they did, the distance between them had already quietly taken root. They lived in two very different worlds. Valerie was family-oriented, fond of routine, and longed for a peaceful home. Eddie, in contrast, was consumed by endless parties, alcohol, drugs, and the chaotic lifestyle of a rock star. At first, their fiery love allowed them to overlook these differences, but gradually the gap became an unbridgeable chasm. The media continued to idolize them as Hollywood and rock's golden couple. But behind closed doors, their private life was beginning to crack. And as time went on, those fractures only deepened, foreshadowing tragedies that would be impossible to escape. By the early 1980s, as Van Halen's career reached its peak, Eddie was sinking deeper into the spiral of alcohol and drugs. For him, it was a way to escape pressure and sustain his creativity, but in reality, it only pushed his private life further out of control. As a young wife, Valerie tried repeatedly to pull him back. She took Eddie to doctors, encouraged him to get clean, and each time, she clung to hope. But the cycle of hope, relapse, disappointment repeated endlessly, wearing down her trust and resilience. In 2000, Eddie was diagnosed with oral cancer and underwent surgery to remove part of his tongue. It should have been a wake-up call. Yet even after that, he never gave up his self-destructive habits. While the public saw only a blazing rock legend on stage, behind the curtain, Valerie became not just a wife, but an unwilling caregiver, carrying the weight of his illness and their financial worries. A marriage once built on love slowly turned into a prolonged loneliness. Both began seeking solace in affairs, desperate to fill the void. Valerie later admitted candidly that she had an extramarital relationship, not out of lost love, but because she was utterly drained by the isolation of marriage. The pressure didn't end there. Valerie battled her own emotional wounds, eating disorders that caused her weight to fluctuate drastically. The public, accustomed to the image of the slender starlet, turned to criticize her appearance. Those cruel remarks cut deep, invisible knives digging into an already fractured psyche. All of it, addiction, illness, loneliness, and emotional scars, combined to transform what was once hailed as a golden couple into a tragic story, foreshadowing the dark years ahead. In 2001, after 26 years together, Valerie Bertinelli and Eddie Van Halen unexpectedly announced their separation. No drama, no press conference, no public battles like so many other Hollywood couples. Just a brief statement, and then silence. From then until 2007, Valerie all but disappeared from the media. She chose privacy, devoting herself entirely to raising their son, Wolfgang. Every question from reporters, every whisper of public curiosity, she ignored. People only saw Valerie quietly by her son's side, deliberately staying out of the spotlight. When the divorce was finalized in 2007, the tabloids erupted with speculation, infidelity, irreconcilable lifestyles, and everything in between. But no clear answer ever came. Both Valerie and Eddie chose to keep the truth for themselves. That silence turned their marriage into one of Hollywood's most talked about mysteries. A couple that seemed perfect, a love once admired worldwide, ending in quiet fragments no one could fully understand. And perhaps that silence was their way of protecting the most beautiful parts of their memories, rather than exposing everything to the unforgiving glare of public judgment. After years of silence in 2008, Valerie Bertinelli released her memoir, Losing It and Gaining My Life, Back 1 Pound at a Time. For the first time, she revealed the truth. Her marriage to Eddie Van Halen collapsed primarily because of his relentless addiction. Valerie candidly admitted that in her despair and longing for love, she too had been unfaithful. More importantly, she described the crushing loneliness of living with a husband whose heart no longer belonged to her. By 2022, with enough already, learning to love the way I am today, Valerie went even deeper. The book read like a revelation. What the public had believed about the golden couple was nothing more than an illusion. Behind the smiles, captured by cameras, was a woman slowly withering under the weight of isolation. And then, in 2024, Valerie once again shocked the public with her admission. I divorced in spirit 20 years ago. She explained that the love she once had for Eddie was no longer as intact as the world had imagined. That confession immediately stirred debate. Many praised Valerie's courage, seeing it as her way of freeing herself after decades of endurance. But others criticized her, arguing that the past should not be unearthed now that Eddie was gone. From absolute silence to confessions that shook audiences, Valerie Bertinelli walked an entire journey, from hiding and enduring to confronting and liberating herself. A journey that not only redefined her life, but also forced the public to reconsider a marriage once hailed as a symbol of love and glory. When his marriage to Valerie Bertinelli came to an end, Eddie Van Halen began a new chapter in his life. In 2006, while rebuilding his career and grappling with health problems, he met Janie Lisewski, the public relations manager for Van Halen. What started as a professional relationship soon became something deeper. Her quiet, steady support quickly turned into Eddie's emotional anchor. In 2009, they were married in a heartfelt ceremony at his private estate in Studio City. What surprised the press most was that both Valerie Bertinelli and their son Wolfgang were present. The sight of Eddie's ex-wife and his new bride sitting side by side, watching him step into happiness again, was striking. For Wolfgang, it was more than just the day his father remarried. It was proof that while families can fracture, love can remain intact. For more than a decade, Eddie and Janie were inseparable. She was not only his partner, but also his companion through the toughest battles, from surgeries and radiation treatments to the exhausting days of cancer. Though Eddie continued to face the shadows of illness and the consequences of a wild past, Janie's love and patience gave him rare moments of peace. On October 6, 2020, Eddie Van Halen passed away at the age of 65 after a long fight with cancer. At his bedside were the three people who mattered most: Janie Lisewski, his second wife, Valerie Bertinelli, his first wife, and Wolfgang, his only son. In his final moments, Eddie whispered three short but weighty words to Valerie: "I love you." Eddie's death not only closed a monumental chapter in rock history, but also revealed something timeless: that love, in whatever form it takes, can still bind together people who once seemed to have gone their separate ways. After years of silence and dedicating herself to her son, Valerie Bertinelli decided to give herself another chance at happiness. In 2011, she remarried Tom Vitale, a financial planner. The wedding was simple, yet symbolic. A statement that Valerie deserved a fresh start after all the heartbreak. In the public eye, this seemed like the bright chapter Valerie had always been seeking: a normal home, free from the pressures of fame. But the truth was more complicated. Her marriage to Tom Vitale brought years of peace, yet differences in lifestyle and mindset gradually eroded the relationship. Despite many efforts to repair it, by 2022, Valerie had to face reality. She and Tom could not reconcile. The divorce ended in sadness, but it also became a turning point, teaching her that happiness does not have to be tied to marriage. Most importantly, instead of drowning in tragedy, Valerie chose healing. She devoted herself to writing, cooking, television projects, and above all, caring for herself. In recent interviews, Valerie has often repeated the word freedom, not freedom to let go, but to love herself and live truthfully with her emotions. From the young girl swept into a whirlwind marriage with a rock star, to the grown woman who could finally say enough to protect her peace, Valerie's journey is more than a personal story. It is proof that even after the deepest wounds, a person can rise again, rediscover the light, and write the next chapter of life with their own hands. When her marriage to Tom Vitale ended in 2022, Valerie Bertinelli did not rush into searching for new love. Instead, she dedicated her time to herself: therapy, mental health care, and learning how to face wounds etched deep over decades. A major turning point came with her decision to stop drinking. In an exclusive interview with People at the Food and Wine Classic in Charleston, September 2023, Valerie admitted she had gone nearly a year without touching a drop of alcohol and felt happier than ever. I think a lot of this has to do with age. The older I get, the less I want to put that stuff into my body, she shared. What surprised her most was that after months of sobriety, she didn't miss a glass of red wine, nor did she long for the half-hearted feeling of a buzz one night and exhaustion the next day. Sobriety was only part of a larger journey. Valerie began openly discussing anxiety, depression, and menopause. Things she said she wished someone had told me about 10 years ago. With frequent appearances on The Drew Barrymore Show, Valerie turned her personal struggles into a public message, helping middle-aged women see that they are not alone. Even when life is hard, it feels so much easier when I understand myself, know what I need, and take care of my life," she confessed. Waking up each morning no longer tired, no longer asking, "What did I do last night?" For Valerie, that became the most precious gift. From someone once haunted by weight, insecure in marriage, and crushed by the pressures of fame, Valerie is transformed into a voice of inspiration. She shows that the journey of healing does not begin with love from someone else, but with understanding and love for oneself. After her second divorce, Valerie Bertinelli once believed she would spend the rest of her life alone, with 6 cats and a dog. But in early 2024, something unexpected happened. She met and fell in love with Mike Goodnow, a 54-year-old writer better known by his pen name, Horse Whisperer. At first, Valerie kept his identity private, only saying in an interview with People that, "I'm in love." She admitted she had firmly decided she would never love again, but Goodnow changed her mind. "I was supposed to live alone and be fine with that, but when I met him, I knew things would be different," she confessed. From the beginning, they set a unique commitment, the 3-week rule, never letting more than 3 weeks pass without seeing each other. On the April 2024 cover of People, Valerie admitted it was a challenge given her busy schedule, especially during summer. Still, she made it clear, no matter how hard the distance was, this special love was worth the effort. In April 2024, they officially went public. Goodnow described dating someone who had won 2 Golden Globes and hosted 14 seasons on Food Network as one of the most surreal things in my life. The couple made their first red carpet appearance together at the 2024 Daytime Emmy Awards, where Valerie received 3 nominations. Proudly standing behind her, Goodnow said, "Nothing is more wonderful than seeing the person you love being recognized." For 10 months, they worked hard to maintain their long-distance relationship. Valerie in Los Angeles, Goodnow on the East Coast. Long calls, flights back and forth, and their first embraces in New York nurtured their sense of being kindred spirits. Goodnow even joined Valerie on her book tour for Indulge, calling it one of the most fun times of my life. But by November 2024, sources confirmed to People that the couple had split. Behind the quiet ending were unresolved tensions. On Instagram, Goodnow wrote that Valerie was wrestling with her own ghosts and sometimes projected meanings onto him that weren't there. He added, "I love her and always will. But our relationship has ended." Even so, both spoke of each other with respect. In March 2025, Valerie posted a heartfelt tribute on Instagram. "Because of Mike, I have changed completely for the better. I became stronger and kinder after meeting him." She praised his writing as honest, intelligent, subtle, and ridiculously beautiful, admitting he had helped her heal wounds that went back to childhood. She closed with a message. "Thank you, Mike. We may no longer be a couple, but you will always hold a very special place in my heart. I love you." Goodnow, too, could not hide his pain. He admitted the breakup was the most painful experience of my life and wished it had ended more gently. Yet he emphasized that his care for Valerie would never disappear. Their romance lasted only 10 months, but it left a profound mark on Valerie's late life journey. In her 60s, she was unafraid to love, unafraid to be vulnerable in public, and unafraid to walk away when love was no longer healthy. Perhaps that is the most inspiring image of all. A woman willing to live authentically, to love fully, and to let go when it's time. They once made a promise to each other, the 3-week rule, a sign of how serious they were. And yet, they still parted ways. What do you think this shows us? Does love need more than effort and promises to survive? From the sitcom sweetheart of One Day at a Time to a daytime Emmy-winning host with Valerie's Home Cooking, from 2 Golden Globes to 2 New York Times bestsellers, Valerie Bertinelli has proven she was never just a star of the past. She has continuously reinvented herself, turning the spotlight into a platform to tell the truest story of her life. But Valerie's greatest legacy is not in awards or television contracts. It lies in her courage to live authentically. She dared to speak about loneliness in marriage, dared to share her lifelong battle with weight, and even posed for a lingerie selfie at 64 to remind millions of women that age and prejudice do not define their worth. Her influence reaches far beyond the screen. Valerie has been a familiar face in American households across generations. Middle-aged audiences remember Barbara Cooper as a symbol of youth, while younger generations find connection through her memoirs and candid posts on social media. That sincerity is her lasting legacy, the force that carried her through every loss and made her an inspiration not only for her own healing journey, but for anyone who sees themselves in her struggles. Valerie's legacy also lives on through her son, Wolfgang Van Halen. Once dismissed as a Nepo baby, Wolfgang silenced critics with a Grammy nomination for his song Distance from his debut solo album Mammoth WVH. His journey, from a boy drumming on magazines at his father's direction to teaching himself guitar to escape the shadow of Van Halen, proves that real talent always finds its way to shine. At just 15, Wolfgang joined Van Halen and endured public skepticism, but he built his credibility through Tremonti and eventually his solo album, which he wrote, performed, and recorded entirely on his own. Today, with Mammoth the 2, a fiery performance at the 2024 Oscars, and a heartfelt wedding to Andrea Alsop, Wolfgang has overcome prejudice to stand as a respected independent artist. And behind it all, Valerie remains not just his mother, but his proudest witness. At 64, Valerie Bertinelli no longer seeks recognition from Hollywood, but from herself. In June 2024, she drew attention when she posted a lingerie selfie on Instagram with the caption, "For the first time in my life, I love my body just the way it is." It wasn't just a photo. It was the result of nearly 3 years of emotional struggle and 8 months of physical effort. Valerie admitted that throughout her life, she had been judged for her appearance, by the press and by herself. But now she chose a new perspective. The only judgment that truly matters is her own. When harsh criticism poured in, Valerie responded with rare candor. I hope you find a place in your heart not to judge yourself so harshly, the way you're judging others. She emphasized that what matters most is not body shape, but character, kindness, and the ability to grow into the best version of oneself. Valerie also changed her lifestyle. She stopped obsessing over dieting and began eating according to her emotions rather than counting calories. If I want spaghetti alle vongole, I'll cook it and enjoy it, without guilt. That sense of freedom allowed her to rediscover simple joy instead of being trapped in body shame. With more than 1.5 million Instagram followers, Valerie has turned her personal journey into a communal message that middle-aged women can love their bodies, live authentically, and inspire others. She is no longer the sitcom sweetheart, no longer the wife of a rock legend, but a woman who rose after loss to tell the world, "I've made it through, and I swear it will only get better." But Valerie's story is not only about appearance. She has also spoken openly about a reality rarely discussed: the harsh impact of menopause on mental health. At 64, Valerie admitted that the years after menopause have been the most challenging for her mental well-being. On the Drew Barrymore show, the former Food Network star confessed, "I've been gone for 8 years, but maybe they've been the hardest, most difficult, most heartbreaking 8 years of my life in all my 64 years." She recalled facing every familiar symptom: hot flashes, brain fog, relentless fatigue, for more than a decade. She even poked fun at herself for moments of confusion while filming Hot in Cleveland, which led Drew Barrymore to joke, "All the best bloopers are because Valerie got confused." Yet behind the laughter, Valerie acknowledged that the physical and mental effects of menopause never truly went away. Most importantly, she emphasized the loneliness many women endure. "Now I ask myself, what is happening to my mental health?" she said, adding that sometimes even doctors had no answers. That's why talking with other women in the same situation, live on television, brought her comfort. "Oh my God, please don't feel alone anymore," Valerie urged. As a new contributor to the Drew Barrymore show, she sees speaking candidly about menopause as a form of healing for herself and for her audience. "Drew brings up topics I wish I had heard about 10 years ago," Valerie shared. For her, the greatest strength at 64 does not lie in resisting time, but in the courage to be open, honest, and willing to turn personal experience into a message that helps others feel less alone on their own journeys. From the radiant sitcom sweetheart at 15 to a woman who weathered 2 turbulent marriages, Valerie Bertinelli shows us a journey filled with every shade of life: glory, tragedy, loss, and ultimately, healing. Her greatest legacy is not merely in roles or awards, but in the courage to live truthfully, to admit pain, to let go, and to rediscover herself. Her story reminds us that the spotlight may shine brightly, but what defines a person is how they walk through the shadows. And sometimes, the greatest love is not in holding on to someone else, but in learning how to love yourself. And you, what about your own reflections? Looking at Valerie Bertinelli's journey, from the heights of fame to the depths of loneliness, and then emerging into freedom, what lesson do you take away about love and life? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you'd like to continue exploring more inspiring life stories like this, don't forget to hit like and follow our channel.